Jono Gibbs gave his final post-match interview as the coach of Ulster. Pretty awkward.
I want to share some time with the people I've worked alongside tonight and celebrate what those boys put out there. And man, that's awesome. Seriously, we've been criticised throughout the year for performance and all that other garbage, but I feel good about what they've displayed today, because that came from the group, that came from within them, and they should be really proud of what they showed today.
Can you understand why people have criticised you while you were in France on a Thursday ahead of this game on the Sunday?
Not really, no. I think if you look at it, the question is probably, did preparation get compromised? No, it didn't. It was a player's day off, and the fact was it was a bizarre game and that we had 3 weeks to prepare for this game anyway. So there wasn't a lot of detail that needed to be covered off. Players down day. I've got a life outside of Ulster Rugby as well, and I think the question being, was performance compromised? No, it wasn't.
Is there a sour taste in this relationship you leave Ulster with, or is it good?
Why would you ask that, mate? Mate, I've just said, I've just had a great experience working with people. It's been a difficult year. There's no sour taste. So I know you got to ask that, but I don't know why you want to carry on with that. Okay, good man. Appreciate that.
That's the end of the Jono Gibbs era in Ulster, and it ends not on a sour taste, according to Jono Gibbs. Alan, all a bit. Good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, Ger. Morning, Owen.
I think we also have Matt Williams with us. Matt, good morning to you too. How you doing? Yeah. I'm going to go to Alan first on this one. I'll come back to you in a second.
And I want to go to Matt then, because there's a little bit of a lover's tiff between Roger and himself on Twitter.
All right, I
check
missed that
one out with him.
Jono Gibbs, he's going to get asked because he said he was going home to New Zealand, and now it turns out slightly better job in La Rochelle has come up, and he's in the mix for that. So of course you're going to get asked, right? It's fair game.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't believe he's surprised that Gavin Andrews, who did really well in that interview to keep his composure and ask the questions that the fans want answers to. You know, there's been so much turmoil up in Ulster. He was given a 2-year contract there last year, and he's leaving for family reasons initially. Which is understandable, because Bryn Cunningham comes out one day and he says, look, Jono Gibbs is not going anywhere. The next day he comes out and he said, we had an emotional conversation. He's going back to New Zealand for family reasons. We don't want to lose him, but we understand. Then 3 days later, he signed as head coach for Waikato, which again is understandable, because if you're going back home and your dad is unwell, well, we don't expect someone not to work.
Yeah.
You know, he's getting a job closer to home, he's able to see his dad, whatever.
Totally
Fully
fine.
understandable. Yeah. Little bit of anger over that, him breaking the contract initially, but then understandable. But, you know, in preparation for this game, La Rochelle sacked their coach 2 weeks ago, and Jono Gibbs is seen in La Rochelle on Friday. Now, if he's not gone there to be interviewed for the job, and if he's going visiting mates, because he's worked in France before with Clermont, if he's visiting mates or on a little bit of a break or whatever, just say that. Don't say, well, we're packing up at the moment and that's all we're focusing on. He didn't deny the speculation. And I thought the last question, a little bit of a sour taste, is a very fair question. He says, I know you why you have to ask that question, but then he says, why did you ask it? Because he's doing his job. He wants to know, well, there is a little bit of a sour taste. Address the situation, clear it up. Even if he comes out and says, look, this was my plan, back to New Zealand, family reasons, my dad has got better news, you know, this thing has presented itself, it's after creating a bit of confusion, and I went and met them. And, you know, the Ulster thing is over. Fair enough, people wouldn't be angry, but transparency, we hear that word a lot, and honesty and being straight up. And look, from what I gather, Jono Gibbs is a superb forwards coach. Right. I'm not sure if he's a head coach.
Yeah, okay, that might be it. Matt, what did you make of the whole... I mean, it kind of speaks to the chaos of Ulster's season, really.
Yeah, fitting end, isn't it? I bet, I think Jono can't wait to get out. It's an absolute bun fight up there. You know, there's contractual issues, coaches going, you've got ex-players chipping into the mix, criticism of the CEO, criticism of the committee that the IRFU have, each province in the IRFU have running the area. A lot of, you know, non-Ulster players contracted, some old senior players retiring, some heart and soul of the joint. it's a very, very difficult environment up there. I can understand why John O'Gibbs said he was proud of the guys. To have a 3-week break at the end of a really tough season and then have Europe riding on one game must have been a very, very long 3 weeks. So to win so well and to qualify, I can understand why he said he's happy, he's packing up, he can go, but I don't think he can wait to get out of there.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fair enough question in the end. Like, Ulster obviously a little bit confused about the fact that he was leaving, but they have found their new coach, so everybody has really moved on, and maybe now's the time that everybody can just stop talking about Ulster rugby for a couple of months, forget about it for a while, and hope that the reset button gets pressed in a meaningful way. And maybe they might even have a coach for the start of next season.
Yeah, well, maybe. Look, it's just the whole thing is just so you talk to the players. That's a long time since I've been out of there, 9-10 years now. But in the boys that I'm still in contact with, they're just very sad for the state it's in. We've got to remember they made the final of the Heineken Cup, and they were never going to win that final. Leinster were always going to win it because they hadn't been up the top end of Europe for a long time. But after that final, they should have kicked on. And the exact opposite has happened. It's a really salient point when we're talking about clubs in France here. Biarritz, the great European powerhouse that Quinny played against and Munster won their famous final against, they look like they're going to be relegated to 3rd division, to Federale 1 over here under for financial difficulties. Now, it doesn't take long for a great club to become an ordinary club, to become an irrelevant club, if you're not managed well. And we're not talking about players, and you're even not talking about coaches. This is at the top end. Leinster have done really, really well because the top end of Leinster rugby, the committee and the CEOs have done really well. I don't know a lot about GAA, but I would suggest that at Dublin, why Dublin become successful over the last few years is a lot about the top end management that they've got to be getting right. And when the top end management gets it wrong, it has this flow-on effect. Now you're going to see one of the great powerhouses of European rugby, Biarritz, in Federale. Now, Ulster have done the same. They've come from a really strong position. They were set up. They had really good young players, and they've stuffed it up.
Yeah, and I think that's why them qualifying for the Champions Cup was so unbelievably important, in that it will actually allow them to go out and make a compelling case to next season's potential players who are going to join and say, no, it's okay, we've got our house in order, we have a new coach coming, he's really good, and we are playing in the European Cup. Let's move on to Leinster Munster, because we were just chatting off air a little bit earlier on. It feels to me like there's a bigger gap between Leinster and Munster than 1 point at the end of that match, and sometimes you'd be concerned when the post-match analysis is like, oh, we're really close, we're right there at the minute, because it doesn't feel to me like Munster are right there when they're losing Zebo, when you take into account that Leinster didn't start with Sexton, didn't start with Robbie Henshaw, didn't start with their first choice front row. Just it felt like this was not Leinster's second team, but like the week after European Cup win, that's the time you want to get them, and Munster couldn't capitalise.
Will you get a sense that obviously being a Munster man, I was relieved that, Munster brought passion, pride, stuff you associate with the jersey. The big problem, and Matty's spoken about it himself, the execution is the issue. They had opportunities there. There's an awful lot of forward passes, big, wide, loopy passes. There's a timing issue in their attack. And these are the repeat problems. Now, in his defence, Johan van Graan has only been in a couple of months. He hasn't had a huge chance to implement or change things. It's very difficult to do any of that stuff during the season, but the general skill set of some of the players and the execution at that level, you see what you get when you put those forward passes, those wide loopy passes, and there was space, there was opportunities at times, and then you look and Munster had more of the possession in the first half and the second half, and they had a good bit of front foot ball. I thought their forwards really played well. There's not a huge difference in that Leinster pack from the guys that came in, and I mean that respectfully. It's phenomenal depth, but the back line and that execution is an issue for Munster, and just Leinster with limited ball just their timing looked so much better. That comes from confidence, self-belief as well. But look, the gap was only 1 point in the end, but it was 8 points. a minute or two before that, before Grobler gets a try, and you just felt Leinster had that bit of composure, and the emotional week and the lack of preparation. I think being at home saved their bacon. If they had to travel away, it would have been much more difficult. But look, they got the job done. It shows how strong the squad is.
10 is clearly the problem position for Munster at the moment. What is the next most problematic position for Munster, and where do they need to sign in the summer?
It's depth. I think Tadhg coming in, they could do it another second row. If somebody gets injured, the problem Munster have, and look, it's down to restrictions within the RFU. Where do they get players? They're trying to develop younger players and bring them through. They're not jumping straight out of schools rugby and into the professional setup like possibly they are up here. We spoke about the numbers game, the effect that the school system is having on Leinster, and maybe the other provinces are not getting the same kind of bounce back from that situation. So I think another tight head maybe. They need, in an ideal world, you'd go out and sign a tight head, a second row and a fly half. They have Mike Haley coming in from Sale, who's a very, very good player, and Eddie Jones didn't want to leave him go.
He's Irish qualified.
He's Irish qualified. He's 23. Very, very good player. So I think back three, they have plenty of options. When they have Taute and Farrell fit, they have 4 or 5 options at centre. I think fly half has just been this position of uncertainty, inconsistency, nobody grabbing the bull by the horns. And at the top level of semi-finals of Europe or Pro 14, that's where it counts.
Maddie, on the fly half issue, right? A lot of conversation about Munster in the market now for Joey Carbery. If Munster do get in the market for Joey Carbery, they can't sign him on a 1-year loan deal. They have to sign him and say, you're not here for 1 year, you have to come and join us full time, and you're throwing your lot in with us. This can't be the type of arrangement that they're talking about with Ulster, surely.
If I was Munster, I'd be offering him a bit of West Clare as a gift to come down, because they need him. And if I take my Leinster hat off, Joey Carbery needs to start and needs to keep playing. And Johnny Sexton's going to play on and off for probably another 2-3 years. But Carbery needs to be starting. He needs to develop. And the only way you develop is by playing. And if he got a good offer, he should go. And as much as that would break Leinster's heart, and I know Joey Carbery's heart is at Leinster, it would be a very, very good move for him and a very good move for Munster. Look, in modern rugby, your halves are absolutely crucial. They probably have always been, but as defences have improved and the science behind defence, which is easy to do, defence is easy, it's a negative. The negative is always easy. Attack is hard. Creating space and attacking that space, that is really, really hard. And you need a 9 and 10 that can do that. Now, Munster have got one of the best 9s in the world. And maybe if it was France, it might be slightly different. But they need, if you can shut down Conor Murray, you can pretty much shut down Munster. They need someone else out there. Now, they're letting Zubo go, or Zubo's going. I don't know if he's been let go, but he's going. So he had an X factor. Where's the rest of the X factor going to come from? And Quinny's right, but beyond that, they've got to catch and pass. They've got to have some basics, and they've got to make good decisions. 2 semi-finals in a row, Munster have walked away from points at crucial times in the game and gone for the sideline. And they've lost both Europe and the domestic league by a single point, by single points. If they had taken their points that were on offer, they would have done it. Now, Quinny mentioned Rog O'Gara there. He would have taken those points. There's some really bad on-field decisions being made as well. And if they simply had to change a couple of those things, we'd be talking about something different. And we also have to put it in perspective. 2 semi-finals is not a disaster. It's not a train smash. It's not Ulster. But they are hanging in there. And for me, the starting point with Munster, as with every team, is honesty. Is for them and the whole organisation to get together and say, listen, where are we? And to stop trying to talk up, the passion and all that. Passion only gets you so far. And I wrote in the Irish Times the other day, when I coached against Quinny and these guys, you knew what you were getting. You were getting passion, but you were getting serious aggression and skill. And so you had to come there, don't take a knife to a gunfight. You had to come equally matched with that same passion, aggression, or you were getting out the gate by 40. Now, this mob, this current Munster side, they can't be living on the coattails of past generations. They've got to establish their own brand. And they need to stop talking about it, and they need to start acting it. And I just don't. I feel there's a whole lot of those components coming into play with this current Munster group. And I agree with Quinny. You know, I'm pretty critical on Coach Van Graan. I thought he's made some, especially in the Champions Cup semi-final, I thought he made some disastrous decisions, and it was a disastrous build-up. Now, he's got this off-season to get it right. Now, and everyone's going to be watching next year, but there's a lot of work to do in a lot of areas.
It is a huge off-season. I just want to bring up that point about the honesty, right? Because it does feel to me a little bit like we're only one score away, we only lost those games by a point, but they weren't really only one score behind Racing either. They weren't really only one score behind Leinster. So
behind Saracens last year in the semi-final, and Matt is right, they have to address this issue. I know they want to, and sometimes they're restricted. The problem they have, Matt, with the fly-half position is they have JJ Hanrahan contracted, Tyler Blandale contracted, and Ian Keatley contracted. So they can't just go to the RFU and say, well, we want a world-class 10, give us a budget for it. Because the RFU rightly can say, well, you have got 3 already, so come to us with a plan or a solution where 1 or 2 of those guys are willing to move somewhere else. And so it's difficult. And the really valid point, and he mentioned Rog as well, and you look at Rog, Johnny Sexton, Wilkinson, iconic fly halves, which every team just can't have and you can't get, but you want to strive to get to that because you want your 10 out in the field to be your decision maker as well, to be your character, to be your backbone, to be your leader. So if you have a pack that delivers for your 9 and 10, you want those guys to steer you home and make good decisions, and you don't want to be getting up off the bottom of a ruck or defending a maul or winning a brilliant turnover and getting up and you see your backline executing and they're passing the ball into touch. It's criminal. And this stuff is happening too much. And it has to change. So they have to, look, if they've got to work with what they have for next season, Johan van Graan, Felix Jones, they've got to really, really find guys who can catch, pass and execute and get their timing right. Because to be fair, the endeavour is there and the effort levels. And that does give me some hope, Matt, that at least they're turning up. I criticised Munster 2 years ago because I felt guys were falling off tackles, the work rate, the effort wasn't there. So I think the hard part is the skill set, and that's something they really need to fix.
Yeah, I thought they turned up on Saturday in a much better mental state than they did in Bordeaux. The resolve of the forwards was there. They had a strong mauling day. The scrum fell away late in the game. I know they have some injuries in the front row, and the Leinster front row bench is very, very strong. Bringing Keelan, Healy and Porter off the bench, wow, not many provincial teams can do that. But there were all the things you said, but the effort was better. But there needs to be, for everyone out there, when you played against Munster, they were ruthless. They and I don't mean this metaphorically rather. They put their foot on your throat. This was really tough rugby. And that challenge that the Munster generation set down for Leinster has created what Leinster is today because Leinster rose to that challenge. We knew we had to get down and fight just as hard if we were going to have any chance. Now, that Munster group have got to get back to that mentality. Okay, they turned up on Saturday and they were good. They were competitive, but the final score flattered them in the last minute. They have to go back and get that ruthlessness, that dogged ability that we used to see from Munster teams. There's a great friend of ours, a guy called John Kelly. He gets annoyed at me every now and then, Johnny, when I say things about Munster. He wasn't a great player, but he was a great player. In other words, he didn't have a lot of talent that would push you up into that top echelons. But his own ruthlessness with himself and the way he played so far above his weight and his skill level and was so wonderful for so many years. That's the mentality Munster have got to get back to. They got enough. There's enough talent there, but they're not ruthless on themselves. And as Quinny said, passing the ball into touch time and time again. In the 2 semi-finals, I reckon there might have been 12, maybe 15 passes. I haven't counted them. That just did not find the person next to them. Now, if you do that once or twice in a game, it's not good. But to have that number in 2 semi-finals you've got a real problem with skill. And that has to be addressed.
Matt, great stuff this morning. We've got to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to you as well, Alan.
We forgot to say that Leinster were good, and they'll be in great shape this week because they have a position now where they can enjoy this week a little bit more. That emotional kind of high is gone, and having the home game at the weekend, rest.
The fact they've beaten them already, though, it's just like, oh, geez.
Oh, it's another challenge. They have to get up for this one, and Scarlets will sense. You talk about Munster's backlash, the rivalry. There'll be backlash coming from the Scarlets, and they were so much better. Johnny McNichol at full back for them, sensational player. They were brilliant.
Yeah. All right.
Should be a good one.